This video is sponsored by Raycon. In my Dark Eldar collecting journey, I have uncovered that I love the homunculus coven. The Rax, the Grotesques, the Talos, the Kronos, Urian Rakart, the homunculus itself. These guys are just cool. I didn't know I loved the Rax until I put together a box of 5 of these suckers. It is a fantastic kit with tons of awesome and macabre weapon options, but looking at the box art, they're fine, they're pale elf dudes. But you flip that box over and you see one of the alternate color schemes and you see the flayed flesh. Oh, I fell in love with the flayed flesh and I have used it on my entire coven. They look sticky. They're really gross. I have big plans for expanding my homunculus coven. I actually have 3 boxes of Rex that need to get built and painted. But I actually ran into a little bit of a speed bump with my homunculus. Now, I don't love the Games Workshop homunculus. I think he's a cool looking guy, but it doesn't fit with my flayed Rex. And so I went with this proxy model and I really liked it on the website, and then I bought it and started painting it and I liked it, but when it was about halfway done, I put it alongside the rest of my little dudes and I just wasn't really feeling it. It didn't match up. She doesn't feel as impressive or as powerful as any of my other rack miniatures. And I kind of just put her aside. I've been gaming with this mini, but I was thinking about maybe finding a different proxy or finding an STL, but I still like this miniature. It's just not enough. And I want to see if I can take another crack at her and see if I can step her up a notch or two. This model fits in really well with my flayed Rax. The homunculus run the body horror show in Dark Eldar society, so I like the idea of a pretty homunculus who sees the grossness as something beautiful. And this mini, flanked by corseted, skinless bodybuilders, makes me chuckle. That's what I like about this mini, but when I put her alongside my Rax, she looks a little weenie. She doesn't have the presence, and especially when I put her next to my Urian Rakart proxy. And this mini is Pinhead. Hellraiser 1 and 2 are some of my favorite movies, so I knew this mini that blends those films into grimdark Warhammer would be something special. This poor little homunculus just doesn't add up. But I think it could. I've already put some time into her paint job and I don't think I have to lose it. There is something there, I just need to find it. And so I went and grabbed all of my Drukhari sprues. I found these little tubes from the minis that I bought for my Grotesques, and I think these could do a lovely job of bulking her up. I nipped these down to size and then grabbed my hobby drill and started drilling holes in my mini. She already has some little vials hanging off her back, and these will be much bigger. She could use the bulk, and she has this weird insect-like tail grafted onto her. I'm sure that extra mass requires a lot of blood. I used some 1mm brass rod to attach these, and I slipped them into place, and now she has some much needed width. And with that new width, she needs some more height. Rax have bony branches growing out of their backs. These are used to hold their extra blood, stimulants, and snacks, and the homunculus could use these as well. I grabbed some branches and got to work figuring out how to incorporate these onto her. To attach these, the only way I can figure is to glue them onto her back armor. But these tiny little wires are just not gonna hold up if I use glue, so I have to pin these. These wires from sewing pins are just skinny enough to fit inside, so I grabbed a super thin drill bit and as carefully as I could, I started drilling into the wires. I drilled pretty far so that I could sink the pins into the thicker parts of the branches so that hopefully it makes an acceptably strong connection. And I loaded it up with super glue and slipped it in. It fits so I can keep going. I grabbed another bundle of bone branches and nipped these so that they can stick out from either side of the main branch. It's also nice that these bits have hooks and chains. It does a good job of filling in more space. I cut these branches in half and used plastic glue to glue them on for a stronger bond, and then some Tamiya plastic putty to smooth over these connections and give a little extra strength. This was a lot of fiddly work, but in the end, it left me with a nice bouquet of bones. And speaking of bouquets, Mother's Day is right around the corner, and if you're looking for gift ideas, today's sponsor can help. Don't be like me and get lost in your painting and forget to get your mom something nice for Mother's Day. Instead, get her the gift of listening to her favorite things with today's sponsor, Raycon. Raycon's earbuds are the affordable everyday option that's perfect for listening to your favorite music, audiobooks, and everything in between on the go and at home. The case has great wireless charging capacity, and their active noise cancellation means no more distractions while I'm putting the finishing touches on my latest mini. Their excellent and ergonomic design means they're lightweight and comfortable in your ears all day. And with a 32-hour long-lasting charge, an evening or day of painting might fly by and your Raycons will still be going strong. These are my go-to earbuds of choice, and not only that, they have these cool case covers that come in a variety of colors that perfectly complement the Raycon colors. I went with Dreamy Clouds for my blush violet headphones that perfectly complement my pink phone. If that's not your style though, there's plenty of options that you or your mom might love instead for both the earbuds and the cases around them. Go to buyraycon.com/EonsOfBattle to get 20% off site-wide. Head there now to pick up the perfect gift for you or your mom this Mother's Day. This offer won't last long, so head on over there to get the best pair of earbuds you can buy. I love me my homunculus, but reading its profile, it's kind of like reading a lot of Dark Eldar profiles. You read it and you just kind of do your best Vince Venturella impression and you go, sure. It's not great, it's not outstanding, but you get into the nitty gritty of it, and it's kinda good. It's got two abilities for the low point cost of 60 is really good. The first one is if it's attached to a squad of Racks. The Racks have a 4-up feel no pain. I love a feel no pain roll, and 4-up is about as good as it gets. I roll my saves, 3 guys die, or do they? I start rolling my dice, crunk. They do, but I got to do an extra fun roll. And the second rule that the homunculus nets me is called Fear Incarnate. It's a battle shock check, which is usually not the sexiest ability, but it's a battle shock check at -1. Any battle shock checks that takes place within 6 inches of the homunculus is at -1, which means the opponent has a good chance, or at least a 50-50 chance of failing it. And if they do fail it, that nets me a pain token. And I love pain tokens. Pain tokens are the thing of the Dark Eldar. They are the engine that the Darkin run on. It's the army ability, Power from Pain, and it's the best. Dark Elf players start the game with 2 pain tokens, and they can be spent in the charge phase to reroll charges, the shooting phase to reroll hits, or the fight phase to reroll hits and get +1 AP. Really, really spicy, and it kind of recontextualizes a lot of the Dark Eldar datasheets into being just kinda to they could spike pretty good. And the way we get more pain tokens is incredibly fun. If the opponent fails battle shock checks, that's one way that I mentioned before, but the other way is killing enemy units. And that's pretty good because that's like the point of playing Warhammer 40,000, but the homunculus brings in a ridiculous other way to get pain tokens. The Rack special ability is if Rack units kill something, I get an additional pain token on top of the one I get for killing something with a Dark Eldar unit. And things can get even funkier if I spend 10 points on a cheap as chips enhancement, Sadistic Raiders, for my homunculus. Then if I kill an enemy unit that is standing on an objective, I can get 1 more pain token. So let me lay a scenario on you guys. An enemy character unit with attached squad of bodyguards limps its way onto an objective. I swoop in with my homunculus leading a squad of Racks, and if I can kill that unit, I will net 6 pain tokens. Because it is a character unit and a bodyguard unit, I will get 2 points for killing something with the Dark Elves, 2 more points for killing something with a Rack unit, and I will get 2 more points for killing a unit on objectives. 6 pain tokens is absurd. Now that scenario might sound a little far-fetched, but it's really not for the Dark Eldar. We are movement shenanigan the army. Our base move is 7 or 8, our vehicles move 14 with the 3-inch disembark, that is a 17. We have a stratagem that lets us disembark and charge. I can get my guys wherever I want on the board, kind of at a moment's notice. So the opportunity is there to swoop in and get my homunculus right where they need to be. And I mentioned character killing. The homunculus is actually the assassin of the Dark Eldar, at least on the tabletop. The homunculus is armed with 2 rather unique weapons. The first one is the Stinger Pistol. 1 shot, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, AP -1, damage D3, precision. I know from rolling dice that's a recipe for me rolling a lot of 1s, but the precision is really interesting. Throwing D3 wounds on a character is kinda great. There's a Stinger Pistol on the Rack sprue. I cut the Rack arm off and then cleaned it up and carefully snapped her little resin hand off. I got lucky and it popped right off, and now I can attach this, but like the bones, it'll require a very delicate pin to really hold it on. I drilled into the pistol and deep into her wrist and then slipped it into position. It seems to be holding up pretty good. If it breaks, it'll probably break at her elbow, but for now, it's on. Now for the other hand. The homunculus's melee weapon is the Homunculus Tools and Scissor Hands, which is the same as the Stinger Pistol, but 5 attacks. Still AP -1, but damage D3. That's a character killer right there. And for 60 points, having a 50-50 of killing a Space Marine or worse character is pretty good. I found a little knife in the rack kit and got to work giving it the same treatment as the pistol, carving the hand to be slightly smaller and then doing a big ol' pin. It fits like a glove, and I used a toothpick to gently drip some ultra thin super glue to lock it into place. Now she's not only WYSIWYG, but also much more threatening, with some big ol' dangerous tools. I have been tinkering with this model, and I like the edits that I have made. She is now much bigger than a typical rack, and she's WYSIWYG in her loadouts, which is nice, but I still don't think I've gotten to the bottom of it. When I put her alongside my other racks, she kinda just feels like a normal rack. And the homunculuses are not racks. Racks are elves that are lost in the sauce of pain and torture. There's not a lot going on under the mask. If they weren't effectively immortal, their souls would be teleported instantaneously to Slaanesh. The homunculuses, on the other hand, are hyper individualistic. They love themselves and their flesh crafting. And I feel like the lack of a face is what's stopping me from feeling like this is a proper homunculus. I grabbed onto this mini's head and started to twist. My tweezers weren't up for the challenge. It took pliers to rip this head off, and now to find a replacement. I dug through my collection of resin bits trying to find something that would fit nicely, and then I went to my 3D printed heads. There are some good options here, but nothing in a bald. I do like this elven head though, so I grabbed a sanding twig and got to work filing off her hair. This was a delicate operation that I was not very delicate with. I ended up breaking both of her pointy ears, but in the end that was fine, because when I held it up to her body, it turned out that this was way too big. I went back to my resin heads and found this elven head. It's meant to have a big old ponytail, but that should be easy to fix. I carefully this time carved away her hair, and in the big old hole, I stuck in a toothpick, jamming it down with lots of super glue, and then cutting it flush to her dome. I sanded this down and then threw some Tamiya putty to fill in any imperfections, and now I have a nice chrome dome elf. When I ripped off the old head, the neck came with, so I'm gonna have to rebuild that. I mixed some green stuff and then made a tiny little tube that I carefully glued down to her stump and then gently set the new head into place. This green stuff worked out anyway because it gave me a little bit more options for posing. After cleaning up her neck a little, I was able to get her head just right. She is really looking at that skull, while the rest of her arms do all the killing. The face fixed everything. Now, instead of just a rack, this is a homunculus, a lord of pain. Now, technically, this is not a perfectly accurate representation of a homunculus, because this character looks very youthful, and the lore of the homunculus is that they don't look youthful. They're super incredibly old and decrepit. Like, they're so old that even their Eldari bodies can't maintain a youthful appearance, which doesn't quite make sense because the other thing of the homunculus is that they are perfect at body modification, like to a supernatural degree. The lore of the homunculus is weird. The homunculus are an ancient noble faction within the houses of Kamarog, and apparently no one knows how they came to be, which sounds cool and mysterious, but can't possibly be true. I mean, how can like the 20,000-year-old civilization of the Dark Eldar not know who these suckers are? Not even a clue. There's like mysterious whisperings that they could be some of the original fallen Dark Eldar that like ran the pleasure cults back in the day when they were coming up with Slaanesh, but I feel like it's perfectly reasonable that I can have a young homunculus. Maybe they're like a young upstart homunculus, or a protege homunculus, or an intern of a homunculus. This is a homunculus intern. You gotta learn the ropes somehow, and in 20,000 years, there must be some homunculus turnover, a little bit of churn. Dark Eldar have been known to die once every now and again. And now it is time to paint my homunculus, and I'm not just gonna spray it black and start over. I like the paint that is already on there. I just need to figure out how to incorporate all the new stuff into the existing paint job. I don't often add to my minis, but for this, brush on primer will be just the thing. I decided to start on her face. I took off her shoulder blood bottles to give me a slightly easier time getting a brush in there, and then gave her noggin a base coat. I put black contrast paint over her neck and earrings, and now for the flesh. The color I use for my elves flayed flesh is Scale 75 Health Red. This is a transparent color that is lovely over light colors. The step 2 of my flesh is Army Painter Ice Yellow. I use this color to brighten the red and paint in the veins and bones. I sketched the bone of her head peeking through and then painted some fine lines coming down from her temples to her brows. Once I had my lines, I put the transparent red over top to darken these a little and then went over them again with some ice yellow to get the lines as fine as I possibly could. Then I mixed the red and the yellow together and started to highlight her cheeks and chin to brighten up her face. And then more glazing of red to make the colors more saturated. I picked out her eyes with black, then adding a little bit of white, then dotting the pupils. That's a good looking, no skin noggin. I fixed up the rest of the skin, painting on thin lines for her arms to be the muscles and tendons, and I don't know where she got these extra arms from, but I'm sure they weren't using them anyway. Now for the centipede tail. I gave this a second coat of red and then used ice yellow on all the little points, doing a few layers to get a gradient from red all the way up to this bone color. Why walk when you can just graft monster legs to yourself? Now for the cloak. For my racks, I make these old beat up leather. I did a dotty sketchy highlight of a tan color over my original base coat, which was Games Workshop's Gargax Sewer contrast paint. Then I mixed ice yellow into my browns to lay in some more brighter highlights and then a little bit more ice yellow. Once I had a pretty bright mix, I started to do some scratches, dragging my brush across the leather, leaving some slices and nicks in the leather. Once that was done, it was looking a little bit bright, so I mixed some black into my brown and glazed this in the recesses to knock it down a little. Now for those new weapons. This was really fun. After a coat of brush on primer, I got to really focus on these new elements. I got her extra hand perfect, and then for the blade, I decided to do some non-metallic metal. Starting with a black speed paint and then mixing in more and more white paint to get some gradients going. I did some edge highlights of light gray and pure white to really sell the reflections. And I used a final glazing of black speed paint to blend my layers and make the darkest parts really black. Then for the pistol, I used all the same colors. For my racks, I usually do true metallic metal to get them done in a timely fashion, but I don't plan on having more than one homunculus in my army, so I can afford to get a little fancy with her. And you know what else deserves a fancy treatment? That's right, our website. EonsOfBattle.com is the place to find our merch and the best way to support us doing what we do with a membership. Each month, members get a credit that they can use on our new monthly terrain packs or any previous pack we have ever made. This April, we're going hard into skirmish fantasy warfare with 3 themes. The mythical forest, a set of fantastical trees held aloft by otherworldly levitating stones and waterfalls with the power of life. The eternal graveyard, a desolate shrine to the forces of death, macabre headstones piled against the last remnants of a long-forgotten cemetery, and the cannibal camp, a ramshackle encampment where the marauders can divide up their spoils and cook up their victims. These sets are designed with storytelling in mind and are the right size and shape for games of Spearhead. You can match the theme to your army, making your beloved collection look good while dominating the battlefield. These sets are available on our website as STL, and don't worry if you don't have a 3D printer, they are available physically printed for you. This homunculus is getting pretty cool. This is shaping up to be the best painted Drukhari in my collection. And what I'm planning on doing with this homunculus is attaching it to a 5-man rack squad, giving it the 10-point enhancement, and then slapping it all in a little 70-point venom. I've got the perfect transport for these suckers in a rack-themed venom. All totaled up, that's 195 points, which is a heck of a lot for what it is. It's a unit without a lot of teeth. They're not gonna kill a lot of enemy units, but maybe they don't have to kill a lot of enemy units. They have a ton of utility. They're a battle line unit, so they can score on primary and secondary. They can get me tons and tons of pain tokens. They're weirdly survivable with their 6-up invuln, 4-up feel no pain. I'm gonna have to do some play testing, but I feel like there's some juice in the good old-fashioned homunculus squad. Now, I've just got a few more finishing touches, and I gotta paint the bones. And I almost forgot about her blood vials. These I can paint up separately. I gave them a black prime and then a white zenithal, and then I washed them with the same black speed paint I used for the rest of her armor. This gave me my highlights and shadows, and I pushed the highlights a little further with some edge highlights of gray, and then for what's in the vials, it's gotta be blood. And I need to think about how the model is posed and what gravity would be doing to that blood. I painted the glass with a light blue and then painted half of each window with a dark red. I used a bright red to get the blood to properly glisten. I could have put these back on the mini to get the line exact, but I bet I remember the angle. Holding it up to the model, it looks right. Now for those bones. I used some brush on primer for the tubes running right into her back, and then I grabbed my silly putty to mask everything off. With the mini safely under the goo, I primed the bones in black and then gave them a white zenithal from above. Now to get that bone color, I grabbed a brown contrast paint and dusted this over the mini, carefully watching so it didn't get too dark. I switched to a dark brown speed paint and then hit just the tips. I don't know why, but rack bones always look a little burnt on the tips. Now I can demask, and this is always a little nerve-wracking because it's always possible a little paint sneaks through, but it turned out, worked just fine. I grabbed a light tan color and started to do some highlights for the bones, doing a stippling pattern on the top to brighten and give a little bit of texture. Then I grabbed my contrast paint brown and glazed this over top to blend my layers together. Now the only thing left are all the metal parts, and I have all kinds of grays on my palette. After a base coat, I did a little edge highlighting and then dunked all these parts in a black speed paint wash. Now for the blood. Games Workshop's Blood for the Blood God is a really good fake blood. I put this in all the little test tubes around her and splashed it over her cleaver. This paint dries glossy, so it'll make these spots really stand out. I stuck on her big blood tubes, and I nearly nailed the angle of the blood suspended in the vials. I am really glad I didn't give up on this model, because halfway through painting it the first time, I was like, I was really uninspired, but now I really like it. It is my homunculus, and it's gotten me even more excited to play my Rax in games of Warhammer 40,000. I challenge any of you guys watching, if you have a model sitting on your shelf that you don't look at much, the vibes were off when you were painting it, why don't you go pick up that model and start drilling holes in it? Use up all of those bits that you've been saving. See if you can turn your least favorite model into your favorite model. And it'll be your ultra favorite model because it'll now have a history in your collection. With this homunculus now Dunyan rings, I have everything I need to try them out in Warhammer 40,000, and who knows? I may be able to get the mythical 6 pain tokens. Thanks for watching.